Hi everyone, here is the beginning information about the work that you're going to be doing this week. This is the very basics about some grammar that will be assessed on your examination. To give you a little bit of a chance to think about what you know about grammar, I'd like you to have a look at this sentence, maybe even pause the video, and I want you to look at all of the different parts of the sentence. What do you know about it? Can you tell what kind of a sentence it is? Can you tell what types of words have been used in the sentence? There's the notion of 8 or 9 parts of speech that we have in grammar. 8 or 9 different ways that we can label particular types of words, for example, nouns and verbs. I wonder if you can tell me or if you can identify anything from this sentence that you know about those particular types of grammar. Why don't you write that down, write the sentence down, and see if you can label as many of the parts as possible. Here are the different parts of speech that are usually identified in work around grammar. Now, I'm not saying that you need to learn each of these for the examination. We are going to focus on verbs or processes, as they're called when we talk about functional grammar. But I think it's important for you to realise that there's a lot of work to be done in the concepts of grammar, and that if you're not up to speed with some of these things, that you'll need to take some time to upskill yourself in them. Particular, what were you not able to identify in the sentence before, which might give you an idea of what you can focus upon. So depending on who you read, there will be 8 or 9 parts of speech. These are the nouns, the pronouns, verbs, adverbs, conjunctions, interjections, prepositions, and adjectives. Now, we are focusing, as I said, in this unit on verbs, but of course all of the other things that are there help to build meaning in our sentences, so they play important roles as well. So this beginning video is going to just give you some broad work around some parts of speech inside the parts of a clause. Now, I wonder if you know what a clause is. Think about that. This is another prior knowledge check. Do you know what a clause is? It's a group of words in a meaningful kind of order that's helping to give us information about something. And there are generally 3 parts to a clause. 3 of these elements are inside a clause. It's not necessarily to have all of them, but most of the time we have all 3. So I wonder if you can remember from school the parts of a clause that we are likely to see. Before you click on, or before the slide moves on, see if you can remember what they might be. So inside a clause, you generally have these 3 elements. The participants. Now, participants are what we would usually see as being the nouns, or the things that are acting in the sentence or in the clause. Those are the people, the things, the ideas. Often they're labelled as nouns if we're looking at traditional grammar. And we have the process, which is related to the action or the happening in the clause. What's being done or thought or said, or what is actually just being in some ways. Okay, and so you can probably see that that's related to when we label words for their types, we would label that as a verb. The third element that's often in a clause are the circumstances, and these are often telling us where, when, how, why, or with whom the action or the happening is occurring. Okay, so when I have a sentence or a clause, I ask myself, first of all, what's happening, what is being done, what is being thought or said or felt, or what is being. Then I ask who or what is doing that or having it done to them. And then I ask where, when, how, why, and with whom is that action happening or that thing happening, and that tells us the circumstance. Now again, as I said, this isn't going to be on the examination, except that it's considered partly the prior learning that you've had. So we would expect that in a clause or in a sentence you would be able to see how each of these things is kind of behaving to show what it's doing, what its purpose and function is. Okay, so you can see that I'm using two different types of vocabulary there. That's because we have two different types of grammar that is a part of the curriculum. The first is traditional grammar, which is what you probably remember from school, where you label nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so on, the parts of speech that were in the previous slide. That's very much about labeling. The functional grammar that's here in these new words, or probably new words for you, participants, processes, and circumstances, are not around labeling something at a word level, but looking at a clause and working out how those words are functioning. Because we could label a word as a noun, but sometimes words act differently when they're placed inside a clause. One example I'll give you is the word round, R-O-U-N-D. I could say, well, round is an adjective, therefore I'm going to label it as an adjective. You know, he had a round plate. But it depends on how round is acting in a clause. Sometimes it can be a noun. For example, she shouted the next round. It can act as an adverb. He ran round the fence. So the difference between the two is that one labels at a word level, and that's traditional grammar, and functional grammar looks at how the word is functioning inside of the clause. Now, it might sound confusing to you, but kids generally really take up functional grammar quickly, and it makes sense to them. Let me show you a little bit now how that can be done in looking at how those parts are functioning in the sentence and in the clause, and hopefully that will make a little bit more sense to you. Let's look at the sentence, Kylie walked in the local park. And if you follow along with the questions that I was asking previously, you'll help to answer what each part of this sentence is functioning as. Now, for those of you who realize this, clauses can be independent, they can stand on their own. So this clause here, or this sentence, is actually a clause as well. It's a simple sentence, which means it's made up of one clause, which means there's only one happening, one process in the whole clause. I wonder if you can see what is the thing that is, where is the happening in this sentence? Of course, it's the word walked. That is the thing that is happening in the sentence. And in this case, it's a kind of process that's about action, because walking is an action. Okay, so what is happening? Walking is happening. If I ask myself the question now to find out the participant, I ask, who is walking? The answer to that question is Kylie. So in this case, Kylie is the participant. Okay. What does the rest of the sentence answer in the local park? It answers the question, where is Kylie walking? And so that means it's a circumstance. It's telling us where the walking happened. Okay, now seems really complicated, but you'll get into a very quick practice at doing this as you go through the next few years at university, going through the English components that you have. But I want you to start thinking about those questions. First of all, for every clause, what is happening? Who or what is it happening to? Where, when, why, how, with whom is it happening? answering those three different types of questions. Okay, let's look at some in more detail to have some more practice. In this sentence, we have Sam ate slowly. So again, that's a sentence, a simple sentence, and I know it's a simple sentence because there's only one happening, one verb, one process. Okay, so let's see. Can you work out where the process should be? What is the happening in the sentence? Of course, it's ate. Okay, Sam ate slowly. We find out the process by asking what is happening. Okay, who ate? Sam ate. So there you have your participant. And slowly tells us how he ate. So what's happening? Well, in this case, I'm going to have to say eating, not eating. Eating. Who was eating? Sam was eating. How was he eating? Slowly. So if we're going to take the words that are there at the bottom, we're going to see that we have Sam being a participant, ate being the process, and slowly being the circumstance. Try this one now. We're looking for the process first. So what is the happening? Okay, I'm sure that you've already guessed. It's danced. So what is happening in this clause? Dancing or danced. Who danced? He danced. So in this case, he is the participant. Alone tells us how he danced. So that gives us the circumstance. Okay? Process, danced. Participant, he. Circumstance, alone. Now, quite often you see this pattern of the three elements together like this. And so just giving a little bit of practice here, it's going to get more tricky as you move through your time at university, but this should help you just to begin starting to think about these parts of the clause. Let's try one more. Here we have George slept happily. A simple sentence again because there's one process, one thing happening. Right, start with the process. What is happening? Right, it's the slept word. Okay, slept is happening or sleeping is happening. Who slept? George slept. How did he sleep? Happily. So you have participant, process, and circumstance. Okay. Now the colours that are used here are how we code the parts of a clause when we're doing it and when we teach children. Okay, so this is how I remember it. Green for process is like a green light saying go, which is a happening or an action almost. So I always remember that process is kind of like that going, that verb, that happening thing. The participant is a person, place, thing or idea. It's describing something. So they're quite often a static element, almost like a red light. George is coloured red there for this, in this case, as being the participant. And the circumstance tells us around, it's telling us about the process, how, where, when, with whom that process happened. So it's kind of like the sky, the world, encompassing the clause. So I use the reminder that it's blue like the sky surrounding us in order to remember that. Just for your own knowledge and for what you will come across as we go through the next few years in English together. So here's a little bit of a tricky question for you to consider at this time. Is this true or false? So in this case, process, when I'm using the word process, what I'm really meaning is just a functional grammar word for the same thing that we call the verb. Okay, what do you think about that? Do you think that that is a true or a false statement? Okay, of course the answer is that that statement is false because, as you heard me describe before, the process is showing how that word or that group of words is functioning in the clause. It's about the function, whereas the term verb is showing its form, it's labeling it, it's giving it a particular label, and not in a clause level, but in a simple word level. So the two words mean two very different things, although they're discussing the same kind of concept. Okay, so different but similar in what we're talking about. Right, now let me give you some simple sentences for you to look for the process in them. What I'd like you to do now is to press pause in a few seconds and write down these sentences and see if you can work out where is the process, where is the participant, and where is the circumstance. Now remember, you don't have to have every single one for every single clause, and sometimes you have more than one participant in a clause. You'll never have more than one process or more than one action or happening, but you may have more than one participant. Okay, now I haven't made it easy for you. I've deliberately put some different types of processes in there because that's what we're going to be learning about next, okay, in the next section. So press pause, write them down, see if you can work out which parts are which. Here are the answers. I wonder how you went with your analysis of those different parts of the clause. Remember that the thing you need to do is to ask, first of all, what is happening? Second of all, who or what is that happening to? And thirdly, how, when, where, why, and how and with whom is it happening? So let's look at the first one. What is happening? Greedily he ate pizza. Ate is the happening there. Who ate? He ate. What did he eat? Pizza. Greedily tells us how he ate. In the second one, what's happening? Were scratching. Now, this is interesting. I wonder if you picked up the were as well as the scratching. Were is acting here as what we call an auxiliary process or an auxiliary verb. It's helping and acting like an add-on to the word scratching because we need it in terms of the tense of the sentence. Okay, so were scratching. We're going to have a look at were later on its own because it can be on its own as a process and it's doing something a little different when it's on its own. So who were scratching? The cats. What were they scratching? The brand new sofa. So there you have two participants on either side of that process. Take note that here's the difference between traditional grammar and functional grammar in that I'm not dividing up all of those little pieces of the cats or the brand new sofa. All together they're behaving as a participant, as a thing in this clause, and therefore they all go together under that red colour. The next one was definitely studying, is telling me the process that's happening. Now this is an interesting verb group or process as we would call, because it has the auxiliary verb helping, was. Definitely is what we call a modal verb because it's telling us how likely something is. In this case it's very likely because it's definitely happening. And studying is the actual happening. So was definitely studying becomes the process, becomes the happening in this clause. Who was definitely studying? She was. What was definitely being studied? Grammar. Okay. The next one, will attend. And again, you've got your auxiliary verb helping there, will attend. Who will attend? Sam. What will he attend? The party. Have probably remembered. Have being an auxiliary, probably being a modal, and remembered being the main verb there in that process. It's a multi-word process. It's got many words helping to show that process. What, who we have probably remembered, or who has probably remembered, we have. How have we probably remembered? There's a change in the question we have to ask there, isn't it? How incorrectly answers the question how, so therefore it is a circumstance. Okay. Now this sentence, look how the pattern has changed. Eat is the process. What are we eating? The ice cream. When are we eating it? Now. Okay, circumstance. So you can see that you can change the parts around in particular order to make English sentences. And this is interesting for kids to see when they label them, when they code them in the particular colours, and you can talk about moving those sections in clauses, in simple sentences, and they really love being able to have power over these parts of the sentence. And the last one is similar. So bite is the process. What is bitten, or what to bite? The edge. And how will we bite the edge, or how is the edge bitten? It is bitten first, therefore it's answering a how question, which means it's a circumstance. Right, I wonder if your mind is blown from looking at the parts of a clause in functional grammar. Remember, this is just the beginning of your learning. Some of this we assume is your prior learning and that you've learned at high school or in life, and some of it we're covering now so that you'll be able to look more closely at verbs, which is the focus of our learning in the next section.